with a welcome. So welcome everyone to our webinar, Launching a Book Festival in Your Community. We have 4 veteran booksellers who will share a bit about the history of the festivals they either run or sales. And they'll offer some tips for you as you contemplate starting one in your community or look to improve an existing one. SEBA extends a welcome to booksellers from other regionals attending today's webinar. Sharing resources with other booksellers is what we're all about, and we love seeing new faces. We have attendees muted. During the presentation, please ask your questions in the chat, and we'll ask them of the presenters. You can write at any time in the chat. And now to introduce our presenters. Jamie Rogers Southern is the Operations Director of Bookmarks, a literary arts nonprofit organization in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Bookmarks' annual Festival of Books and Authors is a 4-day celebration of reading and writing in Winston-Salem. Jamie oversees almost all areas of the festival, including programming, authors, working with hotels, and many other logistical elements, as well as putting together the festival's printed program and press release. Mitchell Kaplan founded Books and Books in Coral Gables, Florida in 1982, and has since opened numerous locations, including stores in Key West and the Cayman Islands. Mitchell is a co-founder of the Miami Book Fair, which now extends to 8 days of events. The first Miami Book Fair took place in 1984. Since then, it has become recognized as the nation's finest literary festival. Catherine Bach is the adult buyer and inventory manager at Parnassus Books in Nashville, Tennessee. She's now the main point person for Parnassus's role as the official book supplier for the Southern Festival of Books. She is also in charge of book sales at the Music City Food and Wine Festival and assists with the SCWBI's annual conference. John Evans opened Lemuria Books in 1975, a store nationally known for specializing in signed first editions, with the First Editions Club that has been going strong for over 25 years. John is one of the founders of the Mississippi Book Festival, a nonprofit launched in August 2015 on the state capitol grounds, which draws thousands to its annual literary lawn party and book lovers celebration. Okay, so we're gonna begin with Jamie. Okay.
Hello. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the history of our festival, and then I'm going to share my screen so you can look at some slides so you don't have to stare at me while I talk to you for 10 minutes. So Bookmarks, as Linda Marie mentioned, is a literary arts nonprofit. We started in 2004 with our first festival, and that's how the organization began. We were initially run by the Junior League here in Winston-Salem until 2006. So for 2 festivals, was operated by the Junior League, and then we spun off and formed our own 501c3. I have been in Winston-Salem since 2009 and been working with Bookmarks since 2011. So this was my 8th festival to work. This past September, we just celebrated our 15th. And so most of everything that we do at Bookmarks has expanded from the festival. So we're a little bit different in that we didn't exist prior to the festival. We developed the festival. Out of that came programming throughout the year, school programming throughout the year, and then eventually our nonprofit independent bookstore, which we opened July 2017. So that is a little bit about our history. I am going to share my screen with you. And hopefully everybody can see that. Mm-hmm. Oops, go back. Okay, so I just have a few kind of main points that I thought I would cover about how we approach every festival every year. Mostly starting with the question of why before we get to the how. So I think it's really important that you ask yourself, if you're thinking of starting a festival, why you want to start one. Is this something that your community needs and can support? Our city is fairly small, so we're not Nashville or Miami, so we can't really have a very large festival that attracts hundreds of thousands of people, perhaps. So we've been a little bit deliberate and slow about planning and growth over the years. But I think it's important to start with, your why questions, what exactly you're looking to do with your festival. How long will it be? Is it a street fair? Is it going to be in the convention center? Is it all outdoor? And if so, what's your rain plan? Those kinds of questions that you just kind of start with to determine what exactly you're wanting to do. So the size of your city, as I mentioned, is, I think, important to determine what kind of festival you want to have. Winston-Salem has 250,000 people living within the city limits, but about 1.7 million in the surrounding area. So we just simply can't support a festival that would grow much bigger than what we currently have. This past year, we had about 25,000 people come from 16 states, I think. But we, several years ago, decided that we can't really get much bigger than that. Our infrastructure just simply won't support it. We have zero public transportation in North Carolina. We only have so many hotels and things like that in Winston-Salem. So we decided that we're not going to worry about being bigger, but try to focus every year on getting better. So I think the second thing we determine is the date that we're going to have it. Generally, our festival has been run the last 15 years the weekend following Labor Day. We've actually just set our date for next year, and that is shifting a little bit a couple weeks later in September. And the main reason for that is kind of my fourth bullet point here on this slide is schools. So we do a lot of things with our school system here. And this past year, we had a lot of trouble with that because school had been in session for a week and a half before we had our festival. So we had a lot of problems with that. And since it's such a central piece to what we do, we decided that we really needed to try to move the festival back a little bit so that we could accommodate those needs from the school. But I think it's also important to think about what else is going on in your city. We have a very large film festival that happens in April, so we don't want to conflict with that. And, if weather is a big factor where you live, or if you are including the schools, obviously summer's not a great time. So the main reason that we have to start so far in advance with this is because we have to get on everybody's calendars, the venues, the city, all of that takes a lot of time. So we try to start as early as possible with that. And the main thing is permits. So I don't know, every city I'm sure is different, but we have to file permits several months in advance to get the streets closed and to get approved for hosting the festival. So that's why that is such an important thing to get locked down very early. Also, just to announce the date early enough that you can start getting people on board. Typically, right after we have a festival, people ask us when next year's is. So the earlier you can get people on board, the better. And again, just for your community's sake, to let your other community partners know, the chamber, or if you have a small business association, get all of them involved and on board with your date for your festival. Obviously, programming is a very large part of any festival. I think that sometimes programming eclipses all other things for a lot of events. And so I try to decide early on what kind of division of authors I want. As I mentioned, we do a lot with kids, but that's not all we do. So trying to figure out the ideal number of nonfiction authors and YA authors, and how many YA sci-fi authors can you possibly have in one festival. So, and because we are fairly small, we have 6 venues and just mainly one full day of the street festival. You don't want too many authors that are of the same genre that might conflict with each other. So we try to vary it as much as possible. Programming typically starts for me as soon as we end the previous festival, or sometimes before we can book people out for the next year's festival. After we get a date, we work on updating our materials to send out to publishers. And, you know, I think past authors sometimes can be some of our biggest advocates as they come and have a good time and then tell their friends. But there are also specific festival contacts at publishing houses that we work with. So the sooner I can get information out to them, the better, because there's a lot of competition for us specifically. So I think that, you know, if you can get in there first, that you have a better chance. Obviously, looking at event grids and through the catalogs, I try to keep a very detailed, organized file of everybody that I'm thinking of inviting or everybody that I have invited. It's a lot to keep up with. So I would just recommend finding an organizational system that works best for you. Mine has developed over the years. And mainly now I just use an Excel grid for everybody that I'm either currently working on or might save till next year, or other submissions that we get that we're looking at. So, and I will say for programming, mostly everybody that we have are submitted through publishers or are authors that I have found coming out in with new books that I would like to invite. So we don't do any self-published authors at our festival. And we host this year we hosted about 58. So we just have fewer spaces for self-published authors at our festival. So, but I think like keeping track, if you're doing programming by yourself, which is what I do, it's a lot to keep up with. And so circling back with people, trying to get answers with people can sometimes get a little bit of a headache. So again, just developing some kind of tracking system, some kind of organizational system that helps you stay on track is a good idea. The next thing that I work on is logistics. So we have a combination outdoor-indoor festival. So we have a lot of tent rentals outside. We use our Arts Council venues inside that are really nice, big spaces. We have to get all of that on the books early. We have theater groups and all kinds of arts organizations that use the spaces that we use. So we have to make sure we get on their calendars early. We also do not have a ton of space. So we rent a pod every year that goes out behind the store that we store some of our bigger purchases. Like this is a picture on the right of Dave Pilkey that we had last year at our minor league ballpark, and we had 5,000 books we had to store for a month before the festival. So that we did not have room for that in the store. So things like that we have not thought of until they happen. Those things always come up every year. So definitely organization is something that I try to make a priority every year. We do have a planning committee that helps with the various tasks. We have task forces, we call them. So we have a marketing, logistics, author hospitality, programming, kids and teens specific, and then the bookstore task force. So those different groups meet pretty much once or twice a month, beginning in March for the September festival, and help plan all different aspects of the festival. And then they report back into me, so I don't have to do everything. That is very helpful. And then thinking of staffing, we do contract a seasonal person who helps with travel coordination. This was the first year she helped me with that, and she was a lifesaver. So that has been a really great thing. We background check all of our volunteers. So that takes time. So thinking ahead of when you need to start enlisting your volunteers, if you have them at the festival, and what all you need to do, again, just needs to go on your overall timeline for you to consider. We divide our staff pretty equally so that they don't all have to work outside the whole time or inside the whole time. So it's just kind of you have to look at all those different things of where you want people and how many venues you have and all that different things. So this year we had 113 volunteers for the festival. And they signed up for one or more shifts, but that doesn't include, we had about 50 people who serve as moderators or panelists or author attendants or help with our authors in schools visits. Those specific volunteer needs we don't put on our volunteer sign up because we like to handpick those folks. So all told, it's a little closer to 200 volunteers that we have for the festival that help out. And this is just a breakdown of my timeline. It's very simplistic, but we start very soon following the current year's festival to review everything. And I really do review every single aspect of the festival, looking at next year's date, booking the venues and permitting. Developing a budget is something that is very important. We put a lot more in our budget this year to advertising, and I think that really paid off. So looking at that far enough in advance that you can put it into your budget is helpful. We update our logo and marketing plan every year. We have to contract with hotels every year. Because we are a nonprofit and our festival is completely free, we do a fair amount of fundraising, which obviously has to start far in advance as well. So this is just kind of my what we do at Bookmarks of how we go about planning overall. And there's lots of little tiny things in between there, but that's kind of an overview of that. I will stop there and let someone else talk.
Thank you, Jamie. I would love to see your Excel spreadsheet. Next up is Mitchell. I think you're muted.
Am I muted still?
Nope, it's good.
Longer. Okay. Hello, everybody. And as Linda Marie said, I've been a bookseller since 1982. So the Miami Book Fair has been going on a long, long time. And I can't imagine, it may seem a little daunting for some of you who are starting out just now to begin a book fair, but you have to think about what you're going to hear about the Miami Book Fair in the context that we're now about to do our 36th Miami Book Fair. So we've been doing it for 36 years now. Then it's coming up really soon. It's November 17th through the 24th. And although the book fair runs for a week from Sunday to Sunday, the street fair is only Friday through Sunday. The Miami Book Fair has now become a year-round literary organization as well. So the Miami Book Fair itself presents authors in conjunction with us and a number of other organizations as well. So for instance, just a week or so ago, we had Ta-Nehisi Coates along with the Miami Book Fair, even though it wasn't during that week. We used to call it something else, but people got confused. So we now call the Miami Book Fair a year-round literary organization. It's a not-for-profit. It used to be a 501c3. We disbanded the 501c3, and we are now a program of Miami-Dade College. Miami-Dade College is the largest community college. Actually, I think it's the largest. It's now a four-year college to a large extent, the largest college in the country. It's got about 190,000 students over 13 campuses, and it's where kids can come with not much of anything, and they can go to school for very little and end up, getting a doctorate degree at Harvard. I mean, it's quite a remarkable institution. When we started this so many years ago, the idea was the diversity of Miami was so incredibly rich that we had decided that we were going to create the largest literary tent under which the entire Miami community can exist. I co-founded it with a number of other people, including the now just retired president of Miami-Dade College, who just retired a couple of months ago. And what I'm going to show you now is a piece that Jeffrey Brown did for PBS NewsHour. And it actually, the reason why I'm showing it, it's a news story that he did about 4 or 5 years ago. And it actually gives, I think, the best kind of background, and he was right on in terms of what the book fair is and what it does, and then I'll speak a little bit afterwards as well. So Nikki, are you able to show that?
Yeah.
No, I'm not hearing anything.
Yeah, the sound is off.
Is the sound bad?
It's not,
No.
there's no sound. It might be clicked off on YouTube. I'm not sure.
No, I have it all the way up. Let's see.
No. I can try sharing on my computer too.
No?
It's not coming through your computer.
Oh. This was tested. Sorry. You want to try on your computer?
Sure.
Okay.
Certainly not this week.
I can hear that.
Well, hold on. I haven't.
Jeffrey Brown reports.
It's part street festival. Used to enjoy it at 70 degrees in Miami while blizzards blanket other parts of the country. And all celebration of that old-fashioned hold-it-in-your-hand technology, the book. The Miami Book Fair International is said to be the largest literary event of its kind in the nation. An 8-day affair that attracts some 250,000 book lovers and more than 600 authors to the downtown campus of Miami-Dade College. But people weren't exactly flocking down 31 years ago when it all began.
There was very little activity, commercial and otherwise.
I've seen you describe it as a scary place.
Very sad, very scary place, and people would not want to come downtown.
Eduardo Padron is the president of Miami-Dade College and a co-founder of the book fair. Today, this urban campus is part of a hugely diverse institution that enrolls more than 160,000 students.
Violence erupted again.
But in the early 1980s, this area was home to crime and drugs. Riots had devastated parts of Miami, and Time magazine asked if the region was America's paradise lost.
Pleasure to see you again.
Padron, though, saw an opportunity.
I'm an avid reader, but it was not my main motivation, if I'm going to be honest with you. It was to do something to bring people downtown, have a good time, and feel at ease in downtown. It was important for the city, it was important for the college.
One requirement, of course, people who write the books. The authors who give readings and are the stars of the affair. The first year, that included 2 young local writers who would go on to literary fame. One of them, Dave Barry.
I had a familiar humor book, and they set up a card table for me. I didn't go do a big indoor thing. Card table out on the main street there. I think it's 2nd Street. And my card table was on one side. Directly across from me was Carl Hyacin with his card. So behind a little pile of his books, and I sat behind a little pile of my books. And, every now and then somebody would come by and buy a book.
And this is a book that's being talked about. Yes, yes.
The fair's other godfather was Mitchell Kaplan, then the young owner of a fledgling bookstore called Books and Books. He recalls having to overcome the city's reputation.
When I would ask for an author in the early days, it was often the publisher would often say, well, we have this new non-prescription drug book out. I'm going to send that author down. I don't know, no, you don't understand. I want Richard Ford, or I want Russell Banks. I want somebody who really is going to have some sway down here.
Ford and Banks eventually did come and kept coming. They're both here this year with other leading literary lights such as Joyce Carol Oates and Ann Patchett, and hundreds of other writers in all genres and styles, with a major emphasis on writing in Spanish. Today, the fair is supported by numerous local and national foundations corporations. As the fair has grown, so has the city and its cultural life. And says Michael Spring, head of the Miami-Dade Office of Cultural Affairs, there's a direct connection.
The book fair sort of instilled in Miami a certain confidence about itself, that we could aspire to things like an international literary event here and not just be credible, but be incredibly successful.
If hundreds of thousands of locals would attend a book fair, that is, then why not a concert or the ballet? And just the last decade has seen the opening of the Arsht Performing Arts Center, several new museums, more on the rise.
Every third Friday, there's something called Big Night in Little Haiti.
At the Little Haiti Cultural Center, acclaimed novelist Edwidge Dantica told us that part of Miami's cultural energy comes from its immigrant population.
This is where a lot of people land, whether they come by boat, and a lot of people do come by boat, or whether they come by plane. It's a lot of people's first homes. So that brings with it a lot of voices, but also a lot of voices, how the voices merge, how they interact, how they don't interact. And that's always exciting for literature.
The fair this year featured an evening of Haitian music, along with authors and publishers from around the globe. Most of all, though, Dantica says, it allows passionate readers, herself included, to rub with authors they love.
Sometimes it feels like a religious experience because people wait on really long lines to get in to see the writers, and it's really one of those opportunities also to have an exchange, I think, with the rest of the literary culture of the country.
Of course, all this is happening at a time when the main narrative about books is that, well, they're dying, aren't they?
Books are alive and well. I can absolutely say that.
Mitchell Kaplan will have none of it. He thinks independent bookstores like his, he now has 3, have learned not only to survive, but in some cases to thrive, even in the world of ebooks.
Most people who are readers read in a lot of different formats. And the preferred format seems to be the physical book.
The actual book.
The actual book.
Lives.
It's a pretty perfect, if you think about it, the physical book is a fairly perfect little machine without a plug.
We don't think that much. We're just, like, if you were to look in the brains of men, like the men in this audience right now, a lot of them just go, you know. That doesn't mean all is rosy in the book world, and even successful authors like Dave Barry have to find new ways to gin up sales. At this year's book fair, he bantered and joked on stage with author Sandra Singh Low before an appreciative audience.
Selling your book turns out to be as important and lately more important than whatever your book is.
So you see yourself as what, part writer and part performer?
I would say, in my case, more performer. Because, you write, honestly, and it feels like you spend more time in the end talking about your book than actually writing your book. I don't think that's the way Marcel Proust did it, but I think that's the way I do it. Yeah.
Proust, Barry pointed out to me, didn't make it to this year's fair, but thousands of others did. I'm Jeffrey Brown for the PBS NewsHour in my...
All right.
Well, thank you for playing that. I think that what that does is it answers Jamie's question about why. I mean, that was why we did the book fair. We really wanted to bring the community together. And then it just kind of mushroomed. That very first year, we had about 60 writers, and literally nobody ever thought that people would come out for writers in Miami. I can attest to that. I was confident because I was selling books, and I knew what was selling, and I knew people were buying very interesting, important things. So let me just tell you a little bit about the basics about what we do and how it works. So since we're now a division of the college, we have a staff, a year-round staff of 5 people. I am an unpaid I was the chairman of the board. That was weird. Somebody called. I was an unpaid chairperson of the board until the board dissolved, and now I'm kind of an advisor, and my role has always been involved in programming. That's been my major thrust. So what we do now is we have the staff of 5, and then we gear up toward the time of the fair. Like right now, we bring on some part-timers. The budget for the fair now has gone up to about $1.4 million or so, with a lot of that being in kind from Miami-Dade College. That in kind, it includes everything from the people putting up the tents, to security, to drivers, to all kinds of different things. We actually have people working at the fair who are professors, who are deans. They volunteer their time to help put this Miami Book Fair on. The structure of it now, we started off as 2 days, a Friday and a Saturday, because like Jamie, we wanted to work with the school system, and we wanted to make sure that the schools could bring their students to the fair on that Friday before the weekend. And so we had it Friday and Saturday. We then went Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and we're now Sunday to Sunday. The way it works is kicks off on Sunday night. We have 2 authors. This year they happen to be Samantha Power and Joanne Reed. And then each night leading up until the Friday, we have an author or 2, and that helps build excitement for the weekend. Over the weekend, as I said before, I apologize for that. You know, my dad's actually in the hospital, and I think that might be my wife trying to reach me. But he'll be all right. So, so we have over the weekend over about 500 writers that come, and we have 18 rooms going at once. So we do have conflicts. We have some amazing fiction writers in one room and a lot of amazing fiction writers at another room scheduled at the exact same time. So people are having to make choices. And they do. And what's really cool is that because it's at the college, we have a whole bunch of different venues of different sizes. So one of the things that we do, and the art of it all, and what I really enjoy doing, is the pairing of the writers. Now, in book festivals, you'll notice that many book festivals do panels and discussions as opposed to having authors just present their own books. What we do is we don't call them panels, we call them pairings. And what our whole philosophy is that we give each writer, you know, their own time, 20 minutes, 25 minutes, and they can do whatever they like with that time. And the interaction happens during the Q&A with the audience. The philosophy that goes behind our pairings is, if you come for this one author, would you also be interested in hearing this other author? And maybe you'll learn about a new author if you came for the one author. That's how we do our pairings. We won't have more than 3 authors at any one given time, but it crosses all genres. We now have a comics area where we only do comics, graphic novels. We have poetry, programs in Spanish, programs in Creole. We're doing a whole Caribbean Reads section that's in English, but it's writers from the Caribbean. We also now work with the National Book Awards. What happens is the National Book Awards are given during the week of our book fair. So what we do is we invite every long-listed author for the Miami Book Fair back in September when the long list happens. So we don't know really who's going to be shortlisted quite at that point. But if you're long listed National Book Award nominee, you are invited to the Miami Book Fair. The awards are given on the Wednesday before the weekend. So the awards are given, and then that weekend, the National Book Foundation comes, and we do a whole series of presentations with them. And what's really cool about that, it's that everybody seems to be a winner in that case. And I'm just getting the hand from Linda. So I'll stop now, and maybe I'll pick up later on during the Q&A.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry I had to interrupt where time is so tight. We're going to hear from Kat of Parnassus next.
Hello, I'm Kat. So unlike Jamie and Mitchell, Parnassus is not the organizer for the Southern Book Festival, but we work really closely with Humanities Tennessee, who is. So what I do is buy all the books for the festival. And I actually got to work at Parnassus because I was an intern for the festival, which is kind of a nice little circle there. So I've got a little presentation, and I'm going to share that with y'all and just kind of talk through that and what it looks like from my end as basically someone who basically takes what Jamie does and then orders all the books. So here you go. So this right here is a picture of the tent from this year. You can see behind it is, up here is our War Memorial Auditorium. It's very cool, very big, nice venue for us to work with. Oh, and that's me right there. So the festival started in 1989. This is the 31st year of it. We have been handling the book sales since 2013. Prior to that, for a number of years, Humanities ran the sales themselves, and then I think Davis Kidd.
Yeah.
Yes?
Whoever's boxing up stuff behind you, we can really hear that.
Oh.
The tape gun.
Yeah, the tape gun.
Hey, Pete, would you mind not taping for just like another 7 minutes? I'm sorry. Sorry, I work in our receiving room. So we handle all the book sales. I've been doing so since 2013 and work with Humanities to do so. We are also partners with Humanities and our library system for other events throughout the year, which, as Jamie and Mitchell mentioned, a book festival does not just happen the weekend or the 8 days that it's happening. It's an ongoing effort. So we work with them throughout the year to think about if we're scheduling an author in February, does that mean that we would want them back for the festival? Do we think that enough time had passed? And that's where our events team comes in, and they work together really well on that. The festival now has in between 200 and 250 authors a year. In years past, it got up to, I think, like 300 or 350, and we found that to be an unsustainable number just in terms of spreading our audience too thin. And for us, it happens the second weekend of October. So for us, that answers the question of when is it happening next year? Same weekend. It does run into other stuff that's happening in the city, but for us, that's kind of unavoidable. We do donate a portion of our sales back to the festival and to Humanities so that we, get to be good community partners and, really support them and what they do, because it is free to attend for everyone. It takes place in downtown Nashville. So for anyone that's been here, it's, a little off Lower Broadway and all the crazy honky tonks, which is good because yikes. All the sessions are indoors, but the sales tent and all the other vendors and exhibitors are outside, which does mean that we have to plan for rain. For us, that means every night tent flaps come down on the walls and get weighted down. We did have an issue this year where there were some high winds, and we came in on Sunday morning to one of the walls had blown down overnight and blown off all the protective wrapping on the books. Thankfully, nothing was damaged, and the security team that was patrolling was able to secure the tent again in the middle of the night. So that was good. Here's a little map. Sorry, it's a little bit blurry of where the festival takes place. Circled in green is the Parnassus sales tent. Circled in yellow is where authors sign. So after they do their event, they come right on back to the signing tent, and folks can come and get their books right next to where the author will be signing. Right here is the big War Memorial Auditorium. Sorry, guys. Our downtown library is right here, and so there are exhibitors all down here on the plaza and all down here. So yeah, just a lot of outdoor space for people to walk around in. Our timeline kind of, for me, starts really intentionally in about July-ish, when we have a solid lineup for folks that are coming. I meet with the team that organizes everything there, and we go over what do we expect the quantities to be, who do we feel like will be, you know, the really big authors and stuff. And then a little bit after that, there is a big reveal party to help kind of drum up interest in the festival, and we do like a reveal of the art and some of the big names, which is always very exciting. For as far as orders, I order almost everything through Ingram directly, since they have a warehouse in Laverne, which is just about 30 minutes south of us. We have a really nice deal worked out where I place an order with my team there, and they deliver all the books on skids to our festival tent on the Thursday afternoon before the festival starts. Otherwise, we would definitely be in a pod situation. So that's really nice. And then Sunday evening, when the festival wraps up, we pack all the books back on skids that need to go back. Ingram comes and takes them back. So that's a really nice, unique thing that we've been able to work out with them, because the Ingram family is also a huge supporter of literature and the arts in town. So they are more than happy to work with us on that. And then aside from books that I'm not able to get from Ingram, we do have a lot of self-published authors, and I just have to keep a separate list of those and work with them on an individual basis. I shared the consignment sheet that we use, and we use those for any of our consignment needs throughout the year, so it's not exclusive to the festival. And then other than that, it's just a lot of check-in and communication for us. Checking with Humanities, see if anyone was added or canceled, checking with Ingram to make sure that authors whose books might be coming out after the festival, that we get permission from them to get them early. If we can't, what do we do about getting books? There's usually always a workaround, so everyone ends up happy. Yeah, and then every week I just get an update from Ingram about what they're able to get and if there's any issues there. Let's see. Oop. That's not what I wanted. So during the festival, we staff our tent with 6 to 8 people and also have volunteers. The store stays open, so our staff is spread really thin that weekend, which is just, you know, just kind of how it goes. We have actually a lot of repeat volunteers, which is really nice. And then a lot of our staff also volunteers with the festival to do stuff like author moderations and, you know, escorting folks and stuff. So we get everyone involved on multiple fronts there. As far as actually running our sales, everything runs through Square, and we just key in book prices. So our sales for the festival are not tied into our POS system, just because we didn't have a way to easily transport our store computers that have our, like, Basil, which is our POS, down there. So kind of makes for an interesting question as to how much we sold of what. I have to wait until we get return information from Ingram to really get that down. But then I do update all my spreadsheets so we have accurate information for the following year. As I mentioned on the map, the signing tent happens right next to our sales tent. So we can really quickly, you know, alert folks that, you know, the book that they're buying, the author's signing right there, or if we want to wave the author over to have them sign the rest of our stock, they're easily visible to us, which is really nice, and was a bit of a change for us in the last couple of years. It's kind of a running joke now that weather will always happen. And yeah, so there's always going to be rain. There's always going to be wind. Something always happens one day. And so we just have to plan with that, with putting the tents up and stuff. The other main thing is I just take a lot of notes. I do it throughout the festival. I'm sure that everyone else does the same. What worked, what didn't. Did I forget the price gun? Did we not get enough change one year? The downtown bank doesn't open on Saturdays. Fun fact. And that's about it for me. For us, it's always been really profitable and really well worth it. Allows us to host authors that we might not otherwise have in the store because our event schedule is so packed. And I've been able to meet a lot of new local authors that have now become kind of staples for us, which is very cool. And aside from the Southern Festival, we do, as Linda Marie mentioned, sell at some other large conferences in town, and those have always been very successful as well.
Kat, before you finish, could you mention quickly, Star might have missed your special relationship with Ingram?
Oh, so I'm not actually sure exactly how that developed. That was before I took over. This is only my second festival in the buyer role. I've been at Parnassus for about 5 years though. I think that what happened was in the years when when Humanities Tennessee was running the book sales, Ingram worked with them on it, and we were able to just carry over that relationship. But yeah, that's some of the photos from this year. It's always a good, tired time. That's it for me.
All right, thank you so much. And now we'll hear from John.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, y'all. I'm just sitting here listening. I've got the benefit of being last, which is kind of delightful in this circumstance. But the way that we are quite different, which is what I don't have a presentation or anything, but I'm going to try to point out ways that we're different in how we started so that it can give y'all some contrast. Our metropolitan area is somewhere around 350 to 400,000 people. And we've tried to take our festival as the statewide festival, but consequently, we have to do it here in Jackson to try to incorporate the whole state. We do not have the ability to volunteer more than 1 day. So we have a 1-day festival and then a 1-day school festival. The one thing that we are striving for in common with all of y'all is the promotion of school kids. This year on Friday, we were able to have 5,600 kids come to presentations in the city auditorium and each get a free book. The next day, we were able to get around 9,300 people in attendance to the festival. We have about 8 panels going at the same time, and we do most of the rooms. We have 5 rooms at the state capitol, and we have the old downtown Methodist church. And we have 2 facilities there. One thing for someone starting a festival that I think you need to really keep in mind is you do need a sizable venue that can hold 500 or plus people. The way that our festival got started was, I guess about after the recession somewhat, Lemuria started trying to figure out ways to reach out and go to customers rather than depend strictly on in-store customer. So we tried to enlarge our brand that way and started doing more outreach. In about 2012 or 13, I was approached by a guy. He called the University Press and me and said, do you think it's possible to have a book festival in Jackson? One of the things that I will say right now is that having a good, strong university press has been a real benefit to our festival. I haven't heard anyone else mention that, but the bond between the university press and the promotion of their books at the festival is very key. It allows us to also focus more on going upstream to the publishers to bring in the national writers that are our friends or our moved away expatriated Mississippi authors. We do focus a lot on trying to make sure that we feature the Mississippi authors. Our timeline on publication is 1 year before or 1 year after. Just kind of have that as a way to do it. We are not negative to the vanity authors or the self-published authors. The way we solve that problem is that we have a tent where they can rent tables and sell their own books. And I think that that's one of the smartest things that we did at the beginning of the festival. I think it just helped keep the quality separated from the self-published, but yet not necessarily be negative towards that type of hybrid publishing or self-publishing. I think it's real essential at the first to get your brand established as to what you're trying to do. And the main thing is to figure out your budget. Now, the way that we grew our nucleus is we worked a couple of years and we started asking the arts organizations, and we started going to community donors, you know, the people that have the big bucks that throw their names around supporting the arts. We went to the arts. We went to the Mississippi Arts Commission. We went to the libraries. We've also incorporated the whole Mississippi Library Association into it. So basically, we formed a board of directors that was, I'd say, acclimated by a same-like drive to promote reading in Mississippi and to promote our writers. We have a great literary heritage here. We're quite fortunate for that. And we are very much interested in encouraging all participating bookstores and trying to, well, the thing that we've done now that we just started at the last festival that we're real proud of is we're incorporating a writer's trail that spins off of the festival. We've got about 8 or 10 writer's trails, writer markers scattered all over the state now, which will be a byproduct of, or a by enjoyment type thing as the festival grows, to encourage people to take advantage of other communities where they have literary events. We are also trying to make the state be the literary event leading up to the festival, so that authors can come to Square Books in Oxford, go to Greenwood. Julia Reed just opened a bookstore in Greenville. We have bookstores on the coast. We've been able to go to the Delta the day before the festival this year and go to the coast. The other thing that we decided on immediately to start the festival was the date, and we decided to keep it at the same date each year. It's the third week in August. It's hot. We call it a literary lawn party. It's very casual. One of the things about choosing that date that the other festivals may not have is a problem that we're faced with football in the fall. It's a big thing here. The other part of our strategy was that we have really no competition as far as trying to launch books and trying to be at the end of, say, a paperback, at the end of the fall hardback the previous year and have a paperback release, or also to try to catch some of the early releases at the fall and be able to sort of launch the book. We were able to do 8 books this year. So that's also part of our goal. Let's see. Our budget, we've gotten up. We started the first year at under 100,000. 5 years later, we're at $500,000. The total sales of books at the festival, 4,000 books sold, 275 volunteers, which I think is a huge amount for our community. We had about 170 panels. In contrast to Mitchell, we do panels somewhere around 45, and we try to do it by subject. And we try to have local authors that don't have a new book out, but just say a local mystery author be the moderator for the mystery panel. We try to do panels by subject. We don't necessarily just do literary, we do sports and music and photography and things to try to incorporate not just readers. But the whole festival is really aimed at real books and the joy of reading. And what other statistics? We have 72 funders. That's been a big thing here that we've been able to keep our supporters. I think that's one of the problems that people have when they start a festival is they got some, oh boy, this is exciting stuff, and they support you for 2 years. I think the thing to think about is that these supporters in our community, we got to have those same people caring about the festival, because we don't have new bucks coming in everywhere from industry. We just don't have the financial resources. And I think that's an important, I keep saying that, but I think the budget is so important. We had, now Lemuria does all the book purchases for the panels. All other state bookstores are encouraged to set up, but we feel that we have to have one store, make sure that all the authors are represented. We've gotten better with our statistics now, doing it 5 years, and maybe don't lose as much money. Maybe the last year or so, we maybe, you know, made a little bit of it, made a little bit to justify the efforts. We had about a 60% sales through for the books that we bought for the festival this year on the grounds. Now, a lot of the writers that we have coming, of course, are friends of the bookstores, and we're working on their books before and afterwards. So it's kind of a boost for the author's sales, but not just for the grounds itself. We try to blend our brand into the festival's brand to be able to bring more readers to our bookstore. With that said, I see the hand, and I hope I haven't bored you too much.
Thank you. That was great. Do anyone have questions of our presenters? I know we have a few minutes left. I know one question that's come up is about staffing and volunteers and how much you rely on them. Do any of the presenters want to talk about that? Maybe ratio of volunteers to paid workers?
Yeah, need to go after that. Okay. We're gonna, I don't want to look like we're not. Okay.
All right.
How are you?
If there are no questions, then we'll end the
webinar. We're wrapping up. Sorry.
Hi, Star.
Hey, sorry. I didn't know I was unmuted.
We're about to wrap up. Did you have a question for the presenters?
No, I hope this is being recorded so that I can see it in its entirety. I thank each of them for giving time, and I do have questions. I just need to see what was answered ahead of time. So what I missed.
And if people have questions that come to them later, we can forward questions to the presenters, or you could email the presenters directly, as often they're quite willing to be mentors. And I know that what they were presenting are these big festivals that are already in progress, and maybe that's intimidating, but they all started at one point.
Right.
And so I think there was a lot of good information about different kinds of festivals too.
Right.
Mitchell, were you going to say something?
I'm going to say, feel free to, I'm sure all of us would be very happy to be contacted. Feel free to give me, send me an email or call or anything like that.
He's very famous in our region. And
thank you so much for presenting today, and thank everyone for attending. We will have the recording up probably next week.
Good. Good. Thank you.
Say one thing.
Oh, yes.
I'd like to say thanks to Mitchell, because he's the person that got us all going. You're a good leader, Mitchell. Thank you.
Well, no, thank you, Jonathan. It's been great, and everybody is doing such great things, and so proud to see so many wonderful festivals in the South. It's really so. Are we done? I can't see anything or see everybody.